first question is about the Armenian Genocide resolution. Every year there are issues that come up, things like there are arguments against passing the resolution that specific year for this or that reason. You've always been supportive. Can you tell us your perspective on the issue?
I'm happy to do that. I passed the first successful Armenian Genocide resolution, and that was in the state Senate in the state of California. We were the first state to go on record. That was my bill, and no one was happier about it than our governor, George Deukmejian. But I think we took a decisive stand. So when I got here in Congress, back when Jim Rogan authored the first genocide resolution that we were actually able to pass out of the Foreign Affairs Committee, I serve on the committee, so I was the Republican whip on that bill. And likewise, I've done the same thing in subsequent years. We had 1 year where Adam Schiff was able to get the bill out of committee. Again, I was the whip on the Republican side for the bill. But whether the president was a Democrat or a Republican, whether it was Clinton or Bush, the pressure brought to bear by Turkey produced the same results. And whether, conversely, the speaker was Dennis Hastert or the speaker was Nancy Pelosi, again, the pressure by Turkey brought the same results. And that's why, in my estimation, the principal issue here is getting our colleagues to understand that when push comes to shove, Turkey has never stood with the United States when it mattered anyway, in my judgment. And secondly, what is more important? The truth? We in the United States represent, or are supposed to represent, an ideal. That's what pulls us together as Americans. And human rights is part of that. And from my standpoint, the truth matters. And at a time when the Swedes and the Swiss and the Russians and the Germans and the French all have done the right thing by recognizing formally genocide, it is past time. I do take some pride in Ronald Reagan's statement when he was president. But it is time for us to do more than put it out of the Committee on Foreign Affairs, although every time we do that, we educate more young people about it. But it is time for us to formally pass it off of the House floor. And I think you and I know how important this is, this issue of genocide, especially in the times we're living today.
You speak so passionately about this. What is your story? I mean, why is this important for you?
When I was young, I had a neighbor, a friend actually, in the community. He was an Armenian who was the sole survivor. In his particular instance, he was shielded because a friend of his, boyhood friend of his, took him when he was a boy and hid him. But I knew from his tales, his stories, of what happened to the population of Anatolia and Armenia in terms of the fact that a genocide had occurred of such a magnitude as to wipe out not only everyone in his village, but to wipe out over 1.5 million human souls. And later in life, reading about Morgenthau, our ambassador at the time, explaining that the Turks knew that when they relocated, he said that when they relocated the Armenian population, they had no intention of establishing a separate homeland or place for them. They knew, he said, that starvation and thirst would kill them, and for those who didn't die, the likelihood that the wild Mohammedan tribes, as he put it, in the areas where they were trying to escape to would complete the genocide. So there was knowledge, a forethought, in terms of what was being done to the population during the Ottoman Empire. So knowing someone who survived it impacted me. But I'll also just mention that my father served under General Patton in 3rd Army and later in 7th Army, and was outside of Munich at Dachau concentration camp when that death camp was liberated. He had his brother's camera, and so he photographed the starving human beings. He photographed what he saw, the death. It is so eerily reminiscent of the Armenian Genocide, and as my father would say, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. After all, Hitler said to his chiefs of staff, to the Joint Chiefs, when he was planning his own annihilation of the Jewish people, who speak today of the annihilation of the Armenians. And so I just think in a day when Darfur, Sudan is on our lips, when genocides are occurring in the world around us, again, if we don't have accountability, it's hard to get today right if we don't get the past right. It's hard to get accountability. You know, accountability is very important here in terms of this issue of genocide. And if we can't get it not only in the present but also in the past, if we allow people basically to escape that accountability or to deny it, then we make it more difficult to confront the very genocide that we might face today. And who knows what additional challenges we're going to face with in Nagorno-Karabakh, or you know, with the comments that have come out of Azerbaijan today. You know, the threatening rhetoric that I read in the paper, the 570% increase in the budget. You and I know Azerbaijan does not need that for its defense. And so you wonder, what will the future bring? Will history repeat itself when you see these threatening commentary? And so to me, it's important, two things are important. We support Armenia today. We block the we put an end, we put the pressure on to put an end to that blockade. This is why I was one of the sponsors, one of the authors of the amendment that we put, that there will be no U.S. money spent on any scheme to build a railroad that bypasses Armenia and goes through Georgia and Turkey. We've got to break the blockade. We've got to open up Armenia so that it can successfully thrive, and right now it's under basically a situation where it costs so much more to move its goods to market that it's a major hardship on the people. And second, we've got to rectify history by recognizing the full extent of the Armenian genocide.
My final question is on Darfur. You mentioned Darfur, and alongside China, in recent months, and even in the last couple of years, Turkey has been quite, let's say, to put it mildly, friendly with the leadership in Sudan. And recently, it's even tried to use its seat in the United Nations Security Council to really alleviate the pressure from Sudan. What are your thoughts here?
Right. Well, I think you know, I'm an author of legislation to use broadcasting. Like Radio Free Afghanistan, my legislation expanded Radio Free Asia into all the dialects. I think we need to broadcast in and shame these governments while bringing pressure on them and tell their people the truth about the genocide they're helping to commit. One of the things I did was to bring Don Cheadle, the actor, and Paul Rusesabagina, who he portrayed. They were the victim. Paul was the fellow who saved 1,200 people, the hotelier who saved 1,200 people in Rwanda, in the Rwanda genocide, by standing up to these kinds of threats, by sheer personal integrity and bravery. And Don Cheadle and he went into a village that had been attacked. I brought with me a Nightline camera crew that I invited, and we documented this. And I took some of this evidence up to the UN when we were getting our resolution through on Darfur. What we're trying to do is to show how Chinese weapons are used not just by the Janjaweed, but also by the Khartoum government. One of the reasons we have the International Criminal Court, and I've been involved in the effort to get Bashir indicted in Khartoum, the head of state, over his involvement in this. We want them to understand that there is going to be a price to be paid, and we've got to rally the international community and have him tried for crimes against humanity. And as that kind of pressure comes on, it's a message to others. It's a message that the international community will be committed to seeing you brought to the bar of justice when you're involved in genocidal acts.